just going to give it a second here to let some of the attendees come in here. I see people starting to trickle in now. So welcome everyone to the Shift Connect conference. Day 5 of 5 days. It's been a really good week so far with lots of different topics talking about food and health, libraries, transit. We've covered a whole gamut of topics this year. I'm Travis Nickel. I'm one of the students in the conference course this year. On behalf of our class and our professor, Dr. Wen Thomas, pleased to welcome you to this event hosted by the School of Planning at Dalhousie University. We'll start off by saying we're really grateful to live, work, and play on Mi'kma'ki, traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We thank our Dalhousie University Elder-in-Residence, Gary Musquewa-LeBlanc, for opening our conference with a blessing this year. She's done in previous years. She opened it for us on the first day, on Monday, with our Access to Food panel. If you'd like to check out the blessing, she always has, I've heard Jerry speak a number of times, she always has a lot of really great knowledge to pass on to us about more than just these land acknowledgements and what it means to actually be treaty people, everyone who lives and plays on Mi'kma'ki. I would like to pass it over now quickly to our Mayor of Halifax here, Mayor Savage, to give us a few opening words for our keynote day today.
All right, good morning. Can I be heard? I've got light shining in behind me here. It's a beautiful sunny day in Mi'kma'ki, and I want to reinforce my acknowledgement of the land and that we're all beneficiaries of peace and friendship treaties with the region's indigenous people, and particularly the Mi'kmaq. And this part of our territory is what's referred to as Chubuktuk, meaning the Great Harbor. You know, for me, just over a year ago, in fact, it was March 12th of 2020 that our office became one of the first in this part of the world to head home out of an abundance of caution as we waited to learn if we'd been exposed to COVID through a connection to a member of somebody on my team. It turned out to be a false alarm, but a worrisome and disorienting precursor of what was to come. Indeed, all city offices and most workplaces across our province were closed the following week, and we learned there are things you can plan for and things that you need to react to. So here we are a full year later, still connecting virtually, but eagerly anticipating the full rollout of vaccines. On the one hand, we continue to experience loss and isolation, and on the other, we have a front row seat to a modern medical miracle in the making. Alongside the many challenges and sorrows of the past year, it's fair to say many of us experienced something else: gratitude. Gratitude for the public health measures that have made us one of the safest places on earth, for the support we've shown each other and our local businesses, and for the special qualities of this beautiful place that we call home. And while we yearn for an end to this pandemic, we have learned how to be together while we're apart. Consider how quickly in our community people lined up down the block on Islesville Street in Halifax to buy tacos from a Mexican immigrant who was close to losing her business, or to see how many people have volunteered to pitch in on COVID screening to help keep the virus in check. Certainly look forward to the bubble again on April 19th as a target date, and beyond that to the safe opening of our province to other Canadian visitors and eventually international. Past few years have brought record population growth to our city and the downtown, and now in complete communities that we have designated for sustainable growth. More than 9,000 new people came to Halifax last year, making us the second fastest growing city in Canada. The last 5 years, we've been in the top 2 or 3. And if these rates continue, we will exceed our economic growth plan to increase our population to 550,000 by 2031. There's also encouraging news on the employment front. We were the most successful city in maintaining, in fact, we grew by 4,600 full-time jobs through COVID from January to January. So when you think you might be slowing down, people are recognizing that. I would say some people in larger cities have recognized that we have a good thing going as a mid-sized city. People have seen those beach selfies and our collective efforts to manage COVID, and they want in. Companies are noticing too. 17 new companies have chosen to locate here in the past year, contributing thousands of jobs, and I've had a chance to talk to many of them. Our willingness to make health and safety of our friends and neighbors a top priority says a lot about us as people, confirming my belief that we will be okay because we're getting through this. As we turn the corner in COVID, the municipality intends to continue to move our capital projects to tender, creating opportunities for work, approving additional sustainable and just projects to address the very real crunch for housing, including affordable homes, and to partner with other orders of government to deliver major infrastructure projects. The theme is to connect this week, and we will continue to connect our communities physically and spiritually. But we need more dependable, modern transit, and we have plans that are very ambitious for additional ferries, for rapid transit, electrification of our fleet. And we're determined to be a leader in the green economy by meeting the aggressive commitments of our Halifax climate change strategy. We're having a hackathon tonight to work to sustain the benefits of growth and make sure that the benefits of growth accrue to more people in ways that are sustainable, just, and equitable, and that we will continue to be one of Canada's most successful and best loved cities. I've always enjoyed being part of the SHIFT conference and being invited. First time I've done this virtually, of course, for just about everybody. But this is a conference that we pay very close attention to and are very appreciative of. So to all the folks who are speaking today, the panelists and who've been part of this week, we thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you're doing. We look forward to working with you to make our city better, more just, more sustainable. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Willaliuk.
Thank you so much, Mayor Savage. It's always really great to hear you speak. I remember doing elbow bumps after your speech last year, just at the very start of COVID. What a year it's been.
Thank you.
All right. So now, just before we pass it over to our keynote speaker for this morning, I just want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors for the conference. So we have the Atlantic Planners Institute, the Licensed Professional Planners Association of Nova Scotia, Turner, Drake and Partners Limited, FBM, Fathom, ZAP, and the Dalhousie University President's Office. So I'm pleased to welcome with us today as our first keynote speaker for the conference, Dr. Laxmi Pant. Dr. Pant is a senior lecturer of human geography at the Natural Resources Institute, University of Greenwich in the United Kingdom. He holds a PhD from the University of Guelph in Canada. His PhD research involved the use of innovation systems approach to examine DFID, which is now the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, funded agricultural development projects in collaboration with the United Nations University Maastricht Economic and Social Research Institute on Innovation and Technology, and the Food and Agriculture Organization. Dr. Pant has contributed to human geography through research, teaching, and development practice, specifically in the areas of food and agricultural innovation, food security, and climate resilient and low carbon agroecological intensification. His research has appeared in reputed international journals such as Agriculture and Human Values, Journal of Agriculture, Education and Extension, Regional Environmental Change, the Journal of Rural Studies, Sustainability, and Current Opinion in Environmental Sustainability. Dr. Pant has extensive experience in planning, monitoring, and evaluation using classical program logic models and their alternatives such as outcome mapping and reflexive interaction assessment, particularly in developing area contexts of developing as well as developed countries, and facilitating multi-stakeholder processes, including establishment and strengthening innovation platforms. He is also engaged in various national and international communities of scholars and practitioners working on developing effective strategies for sustainable development, including his role as a contributing author of the IPCC 6 Assessment Special Report on Climate Change and Land. So I'll pass over to you, Dr. Pant.
Thank you, Travis, for this such a nice, elaborate, detailed, introduction. And hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And as I said earlier, I'm Laxmi Pant from the Natural Resources Institute at the University of Greenwich. I moved to UK before the pandemic, and this opportunity to talk is kind of homecoming for me, because I could not be back after I came to UK. I had plans to travel back and forth and continue working on both sides of the Atlantic, but because of the pandemic, we are stuck here. So I'm happy to talk about the video and share some experience. And today I'm going to discuss my work on how broadband internet shape just and sustainable rural future. And to start off, I'll use Mentimeter to better understand who you are and where you are. In this kind of virtual environment, it's hard to get the audience eye contact and who you are there, kind of the connection that we love to see. And then I'll give you a roller coaster view of digital revolution, gigabit ambitions that many regions are having these days, and the digital divide rural and remote areas are going through. And next, I'll present different models and examples of bridging rural digital divide. And I'll focus on why subsidies to incumbent internet service providers may not produce desired results. This has become very common in the mainstream practice, but my argument would be why it may not be the best option we may be looking at. And I'll also provide some evidence of how digital commons, community-based ISPs are delivering gigabit connections. We're not talking about 100 Mbps, we're talking about 1,000 Mbps connection that the future of digital economy may require. Then I'll conclude my presentation with a call for planners to engage in realizing this kind of gigabit ambitions, so rural and remote communities can also participate in the digital economy, that is coming in this post-pandemic future. So now let me ask you, if you look at the code there, you can either use your app or type menti.com and put this code. And I can see your results on the screen, and you'll also be see the result. So my first question here is that what are the two most essential things for us, for our living? So please take your time and then input from your device, please. Food and shelter, connectivity, glad to see that. Health, connection is coming a popular, essential thing. Food, yes, of course. Water, okay, so the usual answer I often get to this question is, of course, food and water. And however, this pandemic has made it clear that now it may be the food and broadband internet. As we take drinking water, for granted in many parts of the world, particularly the developed countries, and then shelters, of course, that's another essential thing that applies to every region, regardless of the economic stage. So another question for you. So which of the following internet speed best describes the connectivity you currently have? You can just give a guess. You don't have to be very accurate. I can see two of you have mentioned the gigabit connection. I would be very interested to learn about where you are. Not necessarily now, but you may write me email after this talk. I'm very interested in what are some of the initiatives that we have regarding gigabit connection. It's becoming more demanding these days, and then even communities are engaged in getting gigabit connection, synchronous, 1000 Mbps download and upload speed that would allow us to use any kind of future applications, robotics, automation, those kind of application. Okay, so I don't see lower speed data here. So you have at least 50 Mbps download and 10 Mbps upload. That's good. That we can manage. And there are slower speed in remote areas. I can imagine people may not be able to attend this kind of event from those areas. That's understandable. So let me move to another one if you don't have any other input. And this will be the final Mentimeter exercise for you. Then I'll go back to my talk. So here I have 4 different models of broadband infrastructure development. Number 1 is deregulated large-scale private ISPs. Second one is networks supported by the government, public-private partnerships, subsidies, kind of thing. And the third one is community-owned and operated networks. And the fourth one is hyperlocal municipal owned and operated networks. Our mayor may be interested in this kind of network. So based on these 4 types of models that I came up with, so how would you assign the value for money, the speed versus the dollar value per month, the price? Then you can allocate your point to these 2 axes. I know it may not be correct, but I'm asking your perception, and then our perception may vary based on our experience, based on our, life experience, kind of things. Yeah, the results so far appear to be number 2 and 4, based on the value for money. And depending on who you are in the audience, it may vary, and that has been influenced by many factors. So there's no single answer. I was just trying to get some sense of what you think. So, our gadgets appear to be one of the most useful technologies of our time. And every morning, at least for me, I reach out to my phone and eat breakfast, not in a particular order though. And the mobile phones have connected many remote corners of the world. That has been very, breakthrough technology for many remote areas. And digital revolution began with the invention of transistor in 1947, and then transistors have been integral part of all digital devices that we use, from our phones to farm applications, and for instance, efficient use of plant nutrients, pesticides, seeds, or water is possible by using precision technologies, and all of those technologies come with the use of transistors. So that had become very groundbreaking in terms of digital revolution. However, digital technologies have become very controversial regarding our freedom, privacy. Look at the recent social media buzz, the deep fake video of Tom Cruise on TikTok, and that was millions of times. And he's not on TikTok, and social media is going to be very deep fake and synthetic in the future. So there are downsides of this kind of digital revolution as well, regarding how we use those technologies. So let me take a step back into the history of modernization. The industrial revolution have failed to reach many parts of the world, particularly the smallholder farms in developing country. Human drudgery and animal drudgery continue to this day due to the bias of mechanization that favor flat land and large-scale operations. And worldwide, we still have 20% of people without electricity, and over 50% who don't have access to broadband internet. And now we are entering the fourth industrial revolution, and that involves rapid application of physical, and digital, and biological technologies. And critics are already talking about how artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, etc., can provide existential threats to humans. And the COVID-19 pandemic has provided a test for job losses and working from home that the fourth industrial revolution can bring. And these are the leaders of digital revolution these days. If you look at the broadband connectivity, global leaders of digital revolution are Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, UAE, South Korea, and Qatar. And Canada has become one of the top 10 performing countries regarding cellular broadband connection, particularly because of the rollout of 5G technology. So we are nowhere close in terms of broadband internet. So if we look at the Google Fiber City in the US, that has become an industry standard to provide ultra-fast internet, the gigabit 1000 Mbps connection. And the Kansas City was the very first to receive Google Fiber connection to homes and businesses. And for network eligibility, it was required that at least 5% of the residents, of any neighborhood would need to provide demand, pre-register for the service. And that requirement was met in affluent white neighborhood. They pre-register for the service with the $10 fee, but lower income, predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods did not. They didn't have enough demand, not even to reach 5% demand. And many households, up to 70% in the Missouri side, never had internet at home. And that made the online pre-registration process a recipe for disaster. And although Google, designed and installed the network, all the administrative cost was absorbed by the Kansas City and its surrounding communities with the taxpayers' money to cover the indirect costs of the network. And many argue that the Kansas City's support for Google's network went well beyond deregulation. So that was not the type of deregulation we can see. And in some instances, the local supports were described as corporate welfare. So the money went to the bigger companies. So this kind of gigabit initiative have so many drawbacks that we can see. And let me come back to Canada. This CSA farmer, he's very close to Belleville. The place is called Tamworth, Ontario. And they moved to off-grid living 20 years before in 1999 with 2 children, 10 years and 12 years old. And with the use of internet connectivity that they could get in that place, they diversify their portfolio of operations. And they had 40 CSA members. They also operate bed and breakfast for nature tourists who go to visit rural areas. They also run lifestyle change workshops, and they are also publishers. They publish books, and they also run trainings on accounting and some computer literacy in rural areas. And basically they tried all sort of available technologies to connect to the internet. And then finally they installed a high-speed satellite internet system at the cost of $3,000. And the cost was, operating cost was initially $300 per month. And luckily that came down to $100 per month in 2015. That was the time I was doing field research in Eastern Ontario. And With this technology, the maximum speed we could get is 25 Mbps down and 5 Mbps up. And then it depends on the local conditions, the barriers, the line of sight, all those variations. And with respect to the broadband, the most common misconception is that private telecommunication and internet service providers will find competitive market advantage in the last mile of rural connectivity. So the basic idea is they will serve the last mile. In fact, this is not the case, at least from my research, certainly not in relatively less populated areas of Canada. We have the vast landmass, the second largest country by area after Russia. And, rural telecommunication services have been achieved through various broadband infrastructure investment models. And the most common has become, at least in Canada, public-private partnership with the incumbent providers. And, based on our research, it shows that they are less likely to bring price down and then bridging the rural-urban digital divide. And some alternatives are there, and they include well-documented case of First Nations owned and operated satellite broadband internet, local municipal owned and operated networks such as Utilities Kingston. City of Kingston has this kind of municipal broadband internet. They treat broadband something like other utilities. And there are community-based networks such as ONET in Ols, Alberta, and in Europe, Catalonia in Spain, and OneNet in Netherlands. They also run, gigabit fiber connection in collaboration with and operated by the communities. So those are some community-owned networks that had become very successful. And I did some basic research about Nova Scotia. I need to confess that I have never been to Nova Scotia, and then my research did not include Nova Scotia. But for this presentation, I did some online research. And what I found is Nova Scotia Broadband Internet Initiative largely operate on the public-private partnership model, very close to what Ontario has done in terms of the Eastern Ontario Regional Network and Southwestern Ontario fiber technology. So these are the initiatives that are designed. And then, as I said earlier, I would anticipate that subsidies to incumbent providers and public-private partnership may not produce the desired result. There may be a better alternative depending on what we want to do. And, ERON, Eastern Ontario Regional Network, they recently submitted a proposal to the government to develop a gigabit connection in Eastern Ontario. And it aims to deliver ultra-fast internet to 95% of residents and businesses in Eastern Ontario by 2026. And they argue that this will be the next generation of infrastructure. Let me play this video. Hope it will work. Travis, can you give me a thumbs up if you are listening the video?
Don't think we can hear it.
Okay. How can I do it more? This videos. Do you have technical support? I don't see. I can.
Our tech guy says you have to stop sharing quickly, click optimize sound, and then reshare.
Okay, so where do I optimize sound? Okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, thank you so much for that, bearing with me for technical glitch. And, that's what Eastern Ontario Regional Network is planning to do. They are looking for additional funding to keep building on the already available fiber network that they built through the previous funding. And then now their ambition is to go for gigabit connection. Let me talk about one successful community-based, gigabit connection that we have here in the UK. The government in the UK has a target of at least 85% of UK households and businesses will have access to gigabit connection by 2025. So this is very close to what Eastern Ontario Regional Network aim to achieve. They have 95% target by 2026, and then UK government, they have 85% target by 2025. So the Eastern Ontario ambition is a bit ambitious, and they plan to do that through public-private partnership. again, subsidizing those incumbent private large-scale providers. And here, in the UK, the policy is that gigabit broadband infrastructure will be mostly built using private investment. Private companies can decide when and where to build infrastructure based on commercial consideration. And that's the overall government priority. And however, we have seen that this kind of gigabit ambition failed to these remote rural communities. And UK gigabit program also has some measures to these rural areas, particularly the northern region. And for this to happen, the funding will be allocated to public procurement to build infrastructure and also deliver through vouchers. And residents can buy vouchers of 1,500, and small and medium businesses can buy voucher of 3,500 in rural areas. And they can use this voucher to get gigabit connection to their communities. So this is kind of mechanism that they have here in the UK. And there's an initiative called Broadband for the Rural North. This is community-based broadband internet. And when they have sufficient number of households and contribution based on the vouchers, they can go for connection. And this is a gigabit synchronous connection, and the cost is £30 per month. So the current exchange rate is $1. £1 is 1.73 Canadian dollar. So just to learn more about how communities are engaged and participated in this kind of gigabit connection using the model of community-based network, let me play another video here. That's about broadband for the rural north. They call it BARN. Okay, this shows, how the communities are involved. Many of them are volunteers with the technical support from the limited company that they establish. And communities, they can buy different shares. So it's it's a basically community-based initiative. So what is in it for planners, just like us and our future leaders, future planners, students? So this is the classic model of participation. We call it, ladder of citizen participation, and this has become very popular, model for planners, and it was first published in 1969. And you can see that participation can range from manipulation and therapy to informing consultation to the highest rung in the citizen control. So the type of participation that we like to promote in this kind of community-based, municipal owned and operated, community owned and operated broadband internet projects, we like to see citizen has the control over what they want and how they are going to fund their project and who would be engaged in that process. So critics argue that in the very first place, we need to question the legitimacy of participatory spaces. So who get to participate and who get to decide. And the participation in this kind of initiative could be invited as well as invented spaces. Some of those spaces we may need to create through the action, through working with communities. And as a planner, we can see that sometimes we need to bring some radical proposition. People are saying that the planning should be transformative and that need to challenge the dominant state-led and rational planning. So that's what I call subsidizing the big companies, corporate welfare, those kind of thinkings that have got into this kind of development of broadband internet. And the whole idea is, we need to tap on the epistemic privilege of those marginalized people, those people in the rural and remote areas. They are the ones who know their community best. If you look at the barn, the most exciting thing about barn is, people are laying the fiber optic cable on their farmland. So that could be possible only through community participation. So that's the amazing, thing about barn here. So in conclusion, the problems are not only about digital technologies. It's also about how these technologies are developed and then for whom, and the very basic idea of participation, who get to participate, why and when. And as a planners, we need to engage stakeholders to negotiate and make decisions and come up with the decision that works best for them. And we have seen that large-scale ISPs serve populated areas with affluent users who can pay higher price. And subsidies and public-private partnership neither bring down the price nor close the rural-urban digital divide. That's what we found from our research, and other researchers agree with this. And there are some positive, development around hyperlocal municipal owned and operated networks and community-based networks. But, not all municipalities may have interest in this kind of work. And those who have interest, they may also go to subsidies or public-private partnership. That's the dominant practice we can see nowadays. And community-based networks has been successful in many places, but the problem is sustainability of those initiatives. In many cases, those community-based networks has been merged with, again, larger service providers. the merger is the challenge here. And then, in many instances, those networks became dysfunctional because of the lack of resources and the capacity to build and maintain those networks. And when there is dysfunctional infrastructure and a large service provider, they can just go in and buy that in lower price and then connect that to the system. And that's again the problem of bridging the digital divide and bringing down the price. So these are some of the challenges and opportunities that we have seen. And then as a planner, we have a role to play. And who makes decisions is communities. And then our role is to enable them to build their capacity to make right decision. And thank you for your interest. And I would be very happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Pant. That was very informative. I learned a lot about rural broadband that I didn't know now. I do see we got a question from the audience right away here. So it is that the Broadband for Rural North project in the UK is very impressive. You mentioned that community members were involved in installation with the supervision of a limited company. How did this come about? Was it the company's suggestion or the communities? It seems like a real true partnership.
Yeah, basically they established the limited company, and those champions who initiated those projects, they had the technical capacity already. They had experience from working with other companies, and they brought their knowledge into their community, established the limited company, and then mobilize volunteers so that they could create demand, not just demand, why we need a gigabit connection. People may be questioning, we are happy with the connection we have now. Why we need, the ultra fast internet when super fast internet is enough in this kind of environment. And, creating demand, educating communities, the benefits of a gigabit connection is very important. It's not just about technology and finance, it's more about building capacity, creating awareness, generating demand in rural areas. And there are different ways rural areas can benefit, in this kind of post-pandemic future. Telecommuting could be one. When they have gigabit connection, communities may be a go-to place for different companies, because the real estate price would be lower in the areas.
Definitely. I also kind of had a question about the broadband for rural North that I think you half answered already with the answer to that last question, but it seemed like there was a real network of people that was required to for the success of the broadband for the rural North. I wonder if you had any insight as to how they were able to build such a successful network of stakeholders and volunteers to engage in that project.
Yeah, I have been here in the UK for only 1 year, and then I'm still building my research program around these issues. All information that I get about broadband for rural North is from literature that has been already published. And then if you have interest, I can send those literature to you and share with the audience. So I'm still learning about the broadband internet in the UK. I'm more knowledgeable relatively in the Canadian context than the UK context. So my interest here is after being here, why don't I explore and develop a similar program here?
Excellent, thank you. So I guess maybe I'll shift a little bit then. As interesting as that broadband for rural North is, we'll maybe shift just a little bit more Canadian stuff here then. Do you see that with COVID-19 kind of highlighting the importance of broadband and connection for everyone, do you see it shifting perspective, or you see it already shifting perspectives of government in the importance of equitable access for things like education and health?
That's a tough question, but the government is not the single entity. There are different governments, local, municipal, to provincial and federal. There are governments from different political ideologies. There are government in, developing countries. The overall, at least for planners, this is the opportunity to engage communities to create awareness about the need of the broadband internet, and then lobby for government to come up with the best strategy, not just, copy what others are doing. It looks like, Eastern Ontario, they came up with the idea of public-private partnership, and then Southwestern Ontario, they copied that, and then they are doing the same thing. And now Eastern Ontario, they are asking for additional money to build the gigabit connection. And without looking at what researchers are talking about the outcomes, what planners are talking about those outcomes, we can't just copy those initiatives. There may be better models around the world, so that we can mobilize communities, mobilize resources, and lobby government to come up with better solutions. And Nova Scotia is still in the process of building their own, high-speed internet, and then the next would be the ultra high-speed internet connection. And this could be a very good learning opportunity for the government of Nova Scotia, to look at all the successes and failures, and then come up with the best decision. My recommendation would be, don't just copy what others are doing. The condition, the context, the need, priorities may be different for different places, and there is no one size fits all solution.
That definitely sounds like an answer that planners are used to, that everything is different. There's context, everything, and you need to engage with your community to understand the right way to do things to make it sustainable. And I do know that in Nova Scotia recently, you're talking about different models and ways of doing things, that Starlink has started some pilot projects in Nova Scotia. I wonder if you could just speak to what your thoughts are about that system of internet and what effect it can have on rural access.
I was reading about that, and then somewhere in the media they claim that this is the best, it's in Colchester and what other city?
I don't remember all the communities. I think there might be some up in Cape Breton as well, but
yeah, I saw that, and then it's basically they are engaging the incumbent provider to provide high-speed internet. So I'm not too familiar with that, but I saw that somewhere they claim that this is the best, connection we have in Nova Scotia, and then that could serve as the role model. And before coming to conclusion about that's the only role model, then we may need to look at what others are doing. We have examples from Spain, Catalonia, Netherlands, and the UK one is here. And there are some initiative in the US as well, Alberta, WordNet, SuperNet, there are different models. And then we planners and geographers may need to be invited to have some sort of, research on this, and come up with some best solution.
Yes, definitely. I'm just going to give a reminder to our audience here as well that if you have any questions for Dr. Pant here, just to put them in the Q&A box. If you see anything you really like, you can upvote them as well. I'll just ask.
So I can see the questions in the box. So you are reading from there, right? So we are not missing anyone there.
No, I don't see any questions yet. Just seeing if I can get see if anyone has any questions. Give them a little prompt. I think so. So Nova Scotia is, aside from Halifax, is a pretty rural province. Um, how best do you think that rural communities can self-advocate for more change to increase their internet connectivity to government, or to even just maybe create their own network, something like the Broadband for Rural North, how to advocate for themselves?
For remote areas, I would go for more distributed, locally based networks than try to connect to the bigger backbone. Connecting to the existing backbone may be exciting, but sometimes that may not work in remote areas like Nova Scotia. And if we can go for more distributed, broadband internet, either based on the municipal initiative, treat that something like utilities. Kingston has done that, and that's a relatively successful example, but I don't know if they are looking at the gigabit connection now. The time I did research in Eastern Ontario, so that was one of the examples I would love to cite based on how local government can engage in this kind of initiative. And for a gigabit connection, it's not cheap. There could be issues around finances, and local communities could lead that initiative. But at the meantime, we need support from the all level of the government and come up with some viable financial model, model that can sustain over time. So I don't want to see those networks established and then go dysfunctional after a couple of years. We have seen those kind of distributed network in many places. Yeah, I can see the question there. You have mentioned municipal own-operated systems. What are the advantages and some of the challenges, risks? So again, there may be advantage of packaging broadband services together with the other utilities, hydro, and other services that we have in the communities. And with the declaration of internet as human right, just like other essential utilities that we have, it makes sense to combine broadband internet with the other utilities and, provide this as something that we have seen in water, electricity, even waste management, wastewater treatment, those kind of issues. And the challenge could be sometimes the internet service is so critical, we may need to bring, technicians in a matter of hours. But from our experience, municipal services may be slow, that we need to change. That could be one area to improve. And in terms of risks, other than financial risks, I don't see any challenges that municipal government may face to deploy these kind of networks.
Excellent. I also wonder, as we see some migration, kind of the urban rural migration shifts or a slowdown during COVID-19, do you think that this may provide more of a platform to support rural broadband as more people are seeming to go back to rural places and with often white collar jobs that require internet connection in this, as often as being predicted, kind of the new hybrid office model that, that is will be the working world?
Yeah, good question. More and more employers, they are comfortable with the working from home. Many of the employers, they tried this for a couple of days in a week, but now employers are flexible, are going to be flexible. That's I can see the trend. And when we have those kind of flexibility, people may be looking at, moving back to countryside, finding bigger space and establishing home offices, and have kind of better life in terms of going back to the nature rather than living in crowded cities, paying huge mortgages. So the example that I brought from Eastern Ontario, the farm in Tamworth, actually they used to live in Burlington, and they were kind of champion of the environment, and they initiated many good environmental initiatives in Burlington. And they decided to go back to the countryside, and they found a farm in Tamworth. But the very first question they had when they purchased that property was, does it have internet connection? So that was off the grid farm, and the nearest neighbor for them was 4 kilometers, and they had daughters 10 and 12 years old, and they had to do homeschooling for them. And they were able to connect their home to the satellite internet, but the price was huge. But still, they thought that it was kind of financial independence rather than paying huge mortgages in cities. Then they would afford high cost internet service. And then they are doing all sort of things. CSA, they had CSA, and then they are publishers. They operated bed and breakfast, and they also do workshop on-site, off-site on lifestyle change. Actually, they wrote a book about their own farm, off the grid farm. And the book is available in the market. And those kind of trends may be coming more and more, not necessarily off the grid, but in the bigger space. And the challenge here from the social justice perspective is we will see two types of jobs, high skill jobs, the white collar job, that we may be able to work from home, from rural areas, and then low skill jobs that often goes to migrant workers. And and there's also a challenge of automation and robotic. So that's another challenge that we can see in rural areas. Farming, sometimes picking has been automated so much, and then the tillage has been automated in many cases. And those are the applications that demand high bandwidth. And the challenge here is that how we are going to deal with low skill jobs in rural areas, either replacement of those low skill jobs, or making those jobs more fair and just for those workers. So we may need to deal with the new division of labor that we see in not only in urban areas but also in rural areas.
Excellent. Yeah. Speaking to kind of the social justice side of it as well, you talked about some work in the US there that I can't read my notes right now, but there was low demand often in marginalized communities or racialized communities. And I know from anecdotally looking at some news stories that often low-income households can only afford, the low connection and a single device. So the demand is low. So is there a way to frame these arguments for support for greater internet connection without using these traditional economic and demand kind of models, to more as a human right and a necessity kind of framework?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking about the Google Fiber. Like US has many cities with Google Fiber, and the very first city was Kansas City. And as soon as they tried to pre-register the users, the social justice issues became very evident. In white upper scale neighborhoods, they had enough demand. They had the requirement of at least 5% of the registration, pre-registration, to bring fiber to the home. And that was okay with the upscale white neighborhoods. Whereas in areas where African American and Hispanics live, they didn't have enough demand, not even 5% demand, because they never had internet at home. And, they didn't realize that there is a benefit of connecting gigabit fiber optic to their homes. So those kind of, social justice issues are already there. And then, Google Fiber is a kind of industry standard. People are looking at Google Fiber connection to compare other services around the world. And those services were not independent from the government services. All the administrative costs that were covered by the Kansas City. And then, critics, they argue that is the corporate welfare. And this is not fair. We are promoting the technology that came from the Google, and then providing that to upper scale, upscale white neighborhoods, whereas the demand in other neighborhoods is not enough. So those kind of models has big issues around social justice. Forget about environmental justice. There are other aspect of that. E-waste and all sort of things that goes in there, but social justice issue became very clear from that initiative.
Excellent. We also had a panel yesterday where we talked to some library providers, and I wonder, I know there's also a news story out of Nova Scotia here not long ago where there's a small community that the only really reliable internet in the whole community was the Tim Hortons, but it was closed for COVID, so people were doing their job in school from the Tim Hortons parking lot. I wonder if you see a role for public libraries to serve as kind of hubs for maybe in these transition times before broadband is widely available, as a place that can be like a free, higher speed internet that kind of democratizes the availability of it a little bit more.
Yes, again, that's interesting. The Tim Hortons things come again and again. When I was doing field research in Ontario, that came many times. And it's amazing the Tim Hortons could provide that free internet. And library, that was the very beginning. When people didn't have access to internet, library served as a point of service for many of the users. There were some sort of service from the cities as well. In one of the cities I visited during that time, that's in Ontario, the city also provided, broadband internet free for communities. who could just drive into their parking lot and connect to the city network and do the homework. And that was basically targeted for kids. And city officials, they also talk about some challenges with those kind of parking lot broadband internet connection. There are some issues around harassment, some sort of other activities that kids would be doing when they are accessing internet. So Tim Horton is a relatively safer space. Library could be a relatively safer space, but providing those parking lots for internet access, that's fine. But that may not be the ideal situation that we would like to see, depending on our social justice system we have in place.
Excellent. And then just thinking about, oh, actually, I'll pass over to another question from the audience before I ask another one here. So in Cuba, internet access is provided in parks, hotel lobbies, etc. Speeds are fairly slow, but spatially it seems equitable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's good to know that, parks, public parks also have the internet, and people are trying all sort of things. That's good. The demand for internet is there, and the demand for speed will grow faster when we have new applications, the next generation of applications. And one of the positive change we can expect from this COVID would be, government and authorities will look at broadband internet very seriously. We feel the need of this kind of technology, and kids are doing their school from home, and parents are working from home. So the demand is there, and then there are two issues. One, we need to give the speed that they can use the different applications, different technologies. Speed for the sake of speed, internet for the sake of internet may not be helpful. Sometimes we may be connecting for hours, and we may not be able to do what we want to do. And we have seen that in developing countries, there is already a kind of class division. Some of the kids from private, schools, where the kids of richer parents go, they have been doing their homeschooling through internet, whereas poor people in public schools, they miss their classes during the pandemic. And then, when it comes the exam and evaluation, are we going to do the same exam for both kind of kids from the same school board, or from the same exam board, or do we need to find some ways to differentiate the unfair access to the technologies that they have during this pandemic? No question, the only way is we need to connect those communities. Currently we have 50% of the population globally, they don't have high-speed internet. And, mostly in developing countries, internet connection has been through cellular connection, their smartphones. And yes, the access to public Wi-Fi is good, but at the meantime, they may have security issues, our privacy and security may be challenged. We may not be able to access our bank account to those kind of public places. Even we may not be able to input our personal information on when we are on public networks. And at the meantime, surveillance is another issue here. We are eager to connect to public Wi-Fi in parks and parking lots, but that doesn't mean that we are safe. Someone is watching. The surveillance is always there. So there are challenges. Technology is nice to have, but sometimes we need to address those social and security issues as well when we are accessing these kind of technologies. And digital literacy is another area that planners could engage communities in planning process. So how we create digital literacy among rural communities, among different age groups, gender issues. So there are so many areas that we need to look at before we celebrate this kind of broadband connection is there, and um, we can do anything with that. So technology is one thing. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient to make our society better. Yeah, we have seen that since the industrial revolution.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of some barriers as well, something that always comes up in Nova Scotia when any sort of utility is talked about is that the topsoil in this province is generally very shallow. So often there's a lot of rock and blasting that happens to get deep enough to do a lot of things. I wonder if you could speak to the barriers that just physical geology and geography can play in sometimes getting access to rural places.
Yeah, I myself originally come from the Himalayas mountains, and geography is definitely a barrier. Even for road construction, for electricity, and for broadband internet. Now we are talking, to remove those geographic barriers. The one way could be go for distributed networks. That network could be electric network, that could be, broadband internet, so that we have more locally owned and operated systems, and that would better serve the communities. So I would go for more locally based networks owned and operated by local communities, municipalities, so that we don't face those kind of physical barriers to bring the technology into the communities.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. You did talk briefly just a little while ago about how some places kind of went straight to cell phones and kind of skipped the technology leap and skip hardwire phones, landlines. I wonder if you think that there are some rural areas that maybe at a point that they'll kind of do the technology leap and maybe be more focused on satellite internet when it comes down to a reasonable price rather than pursuing broadband like fiber laid in the ground.
Yes, satellite and the fixed wireless could be one way to look at that. We had a champion in the Himalayas. He came to the US for his graduate studies, and then when he went back to his village in the mountain, he felt like disconnected from the internet, and then he had to travel many hours just to check the internet. And he published Open Ed in BBC UK and invited volunteers to bring some technologies to connect his rural village. And then amazing thing, he had several volunteers who came up with all the processors and the computer parts into his community, and then they build computers in the wooden box. So the housing was the case was wooden basically, And then they connected their area with satellite from a nearby town center. And they were able to educate kids in computer and digital literacy. They connected their schools, and they also had portal to sell their handicrafts from the communities. There are initiative. He was a school teacher, and he didn't have any technical knowledge about computers and broadband, but he had that ambition and willpower. And volunteers were more willing to help for those communities. So that was kind of amazing story. There's a video, YouTube video about his initiative that people may like to watch. But in this presentation, I focus more on developed countries. So the challenges are here as well, but the challenge is more in developing countries where they don't have enough resources, and kids are, even not aware of all those technologies that's going on these days. And the amazing thing is they have been able to use cellular phones, smartphones, to access internet. So that has become a good thing for those communities. And of course, satellite connection is one way to look at those remote areas. The problem is there's a limitation. Satellite may not give more than 25 Mbps download and 5 Mbps upload. So that technology has limitation as well. So we can't work more than that. Whereas the fixed wireless may also be possible in remote areas. The problem is the line of sight. I have seen some areas, they have good connection, but when the tree grows in the spring, that blocks the line of sight, and they don't have access to internet. So there are issues around fixed wireless internet as well. And when we talk about ultra high-speed internet, that's the kind of internet we may need for next generation of the technologies if we are going to engage in digital economy. So if we are investing in these kind of technologies, go for the high-end technology, so that we are prepared for the next generation of technological, digital evolution. So I would be in favor of going for the high-speed internet. Satellite for short term, fixed wireless for short term, that's fine. But for some application, even video streaming may not be that good using satellite connection.
Yes, definitely. I was thinking of kind of the Canadian North when I was asking that question. These places that don't have really, they're all a lot of fly in, fly out communities that don't have a lot of public utilities. So there's, as we've discussed already, there's context to everything, and there's community engagement. You need to know the history of everything before you can come up with a sustainable, good solution. I'd like to give our audience one last shot here at if they have any more questions for Dr. Pant. Otherwise, we always like to kind of end these on really high notes. So we like to ask with, what do you think the greatest opportunities that exist for rural broadband connection, and what do you think the opportunistic path forward is, and any final words of wisdom you may have for us as planners?
Yes, for planners, there's enough scope to engage in this kind of initiative. The issues around, who has access to and control over technology is there. And then, when we engage communities for this kind of technologies, not just the infrastructure, but also creating, awareness, creating the demand, bridging the divide, not just rural-urban divide, that could be divide between different ethnic groups, divide between different genders, age groups. So those are some of the issues that planners need to look at when they go for their work in communities. And another issue that I love to see is why don't we do some sort of integrated planning, not just broadband internet? Cities and communities, if they want to be smart, there are a whole lot of other issues as well. So we need to bring those aspects in planning as well, so that we are not looking at just one technology in our planning process. We are looking at a whole lot of other utilities and social issues, environmental issues, and issues around social injustices. Yeah, that's all I need to encourage our planners, future planners, to engage in deployment of the next generation of technologies in their planning process.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Pant. That was really great. On behalf of the SHIFT conference, all of our organizers and our professor, Dr. Ren Thomas, thank you again. That was a really great discussion. Definitely learned a lot from that. We'd like to invite anyone who's with us to join us for some of the other sessions we've left. We have one more keynote speaker, Dr. Kate Mulligan, who will be on at, if I remember the time. At 1 p.m. And just following this at 10:45, we have two different workshops that are starting. One with Planifax on kind of digital connection, and one with Natasha Jukes on women's safety audit, street safety audit. Both of those, you don't need to register for those. They'll just be open links on our website. I've just posted a link there for everyone as well. So yes, once again, we'll thank our sponsors and our class. And we hope to see people at the workshops and our last keynote in the afternoon.